I'm Blaise Olson. I'll be your, I'll call it point guard, but moderator for today. We'll just try to make sure the ball gets around and everybody can take some shots. But thanks for coming and joining IFA and the Open for Opportunity Tour. I just want to kick off by saying thanks. As somebody who started a few businesses, I just feel like more and more it's important to celebrate the spirit of entrepreneurialism and people who get up every day and want to build something and provide jobs and have that kind of drive. The more I'm around people like that, the more energy I have. So thank you very much. I'm going to kind of hand it over here. One thing is the red means you get to speak and just turn it on and off. And they told me I have an all mics off button. So just so you know, if you get a little long, just be aware. Chuck, I'm going to hand it over to you and Matt, and you guys can kick off this roundtable. Chuck, good to be here. Thanks for hosting.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, everybody. And on behalf of Dave and I, welcome to Self-Esteem Brands. We are a very proud Minnesota company. You know, Dave and I grew up in St. Paul, so, you know, minutes from this office. And it is, you know, we kind of hold our Minnesota values in how we work and how this building's designed. We wanted to create 40 acres of a campus that's indoor outdoor. And when we get people here from literally around the world, you know, many of them seen snow for the first time, right? They are surprised at just how beautiful this state is. So a proud Minnesota company. We have 5,500 units in 35 countries and 7 continents. And most people don't know that over half our units are located outside the United States. And so, you know, fitness is alive and well, and really franchising is alive and well, and there's so many opportunities. So we are excited to be here today to talk about opportunities, to talk about franchising, 2 things Dave and I and our team are very passionate about. And, you know, this, with Self-Esteem Brands being, you know, one of the larger franchise brands out there, it's kind of interesting because on this road, you know, we're on Weir Drive here, this is the 2nd largest franchise I've worked for. Because if you go out our parking lot and take a left and go down maybe 3/4 of a mile, you'll run into the McDonald's of Woodbury. And my mom opened that store in Woodbury. And she started as a day lady, and then she worked herself up to like a night manager, and then she worked her way up to store manager. And she had a high school education, and McDonald's was a big part of our life. She was with McDonald's for 20 years, and it's an incredible franchise. And, you know, it's been one of the franchising, like many over the last 7 decades, that has unlocked opportunities from people from all walks of life. And so franchising is kind of in our blood, and it has been for quite some time. Dave spent some time at Pizza Hut. So, like, we have fallen in love with franchising over the last 20 years. We are a network globally of small business owners. So it's so much pride and purpose to go to work every day to help them succeed in their communities. And it's just a wonderful opportunity for both franchisees, frontline personnel, and every day, the better we do, we get to help people around the world. So just honored to be here today to promote and protect this vital industry that provides jobs and purpose to people around the world. So thank you for coming.
Matt?
Thank you, Blaise, and Chuck, Dave, Stacy. Thank you, all of you, for hosting us here at Self-Esteem Brands. I have the privilege of serving on the board with Dave, and you guys truly are what's great about getting to represent this business model and get paid to do it. So we at the International Franchise Association represent franchising, franchisees, franchisors, suppliers, the economic footprint of the franchise business model here in the United States, over 750,000 franchise locations, more than 8.5 million jobs represented, and 3.4% of private sector GDP. Now, Open for Opportunity is all about getting out around the country and making sure that we intentionally tell that story and do it with a mix of the real life examples of the franchise owners and the brands that we represent, and marry it up with more impactful data than ever before. Not only data about the economic impact, but data that tells the story about how franchising supports the workforce. We published a report in 2021 with an economic consulting firm called Oxford Economics that highlighted that wages and benefits in the franchise sector actually outpace their non-franchise counterparts, 2.2 to 3.5 times higher wages. More franchisee employees get things like paid leave and other benefit programs than non-franchise businesses. We found that the franchise business model is more diverse than other forms of business ownership. Diverse in terms of gender, diverse in terms of color and ethnicity, and of course diverse in terms of the types of businesses that are using the franchise model to leverage growth and opportunity. Just a couple statistics, 30.8% of franchise businesses are minority owned compared to around 20% of non-franchise businesses. When we do public opinion surveys, people think of the franchise model and they think of McDonald's or Pizza Hut. And of course, those are great franchises. Chick-fil-A represented here today as well. The food sector, though, is only 40% of the overall franchised economy. And of course, many of the other concepts that Chuck and Dave represent in the personal services category are, some of the brands that are most successful. Commercial and residential services are the highest growing sector within the franchise community right now. So here in Minneapolis-St. Paul, the franchise economy is about 5,000 total locations, about 3,000 individual franchisees own and operate. And Minneapolis-St. Paul is probably the third highest concentration of franchisor companies, the brands themselves, around the country. Atlanta being the largest, and the Dallas-Fort Worth area the second largest. So it really is sort of an incubator of franchise opportunities and franchise concepts. And we're just thrilled to be here as part of our Open for Opportunity Roadshow to tell that story, meeting with elected leaders and their staffs. Had a great event yesterday with Mayor Fry in Minneapolis, and really looking forward to the conversation and everybody's participation. So with that, I'll throw it back to Boyce.
Thanks, Matt. Now we're just going to go around the table. We'll start with Leanne and kind of give a brief introduction of who you are, and then we'll kick off the conversation.
Good morning, Boyce, and everyone. Thanks for hosting us, Self-Esteem Brands. Leanne Rasicek, CEO of Women Venture. We are a community development financial institution microlender. So based here in the Twin Cities, serving 16-county metro area, including some neighbors in Wisconsin. Our primary area of focus is around economic development through training and development, and as a microlender for women in underserved communities and minority-owned businesses. So we serve thousands of business owners right here in the Twin Cities. We're 44 years young. I'm excited for this conversation today because we are seeing enormous growth and uptick from our clients around wanting to open franchise businesses, specifically seeking capital access and more training and development. So interested in partnering and finding solutions to better serve our community, as we've seen more women and more people of color become business owners here in our home state.
Thanks, Leanne. Jody?
Good morning. I'm Jody Niehoff, sort of moonlighting as Rama Lee. I'm with Senator Amy Klobuchar's office. Thank you for inviting her. She could not be here. I serve as the Senator's Deputy State Director, and looking really forward to hearing from you all and learning more. As you know, the Senator is quite passionate about workforce development and innovation and supporting entrepreneurs. And she, as you will hear soon, has been making her way around the state, doing sort of an infrastructure economic development tour, learning and hearing from communities. And in a similar vein, as I hear these conversations, and I'm not sure how closely you're following it, sort of as an ambassador for the Senator and the federal government, the Commerce Department just launched a capital readiness program, which, and perhaps you've already heard about it, but it's a wonderful grant opportunity for specifically entrepreneurs, specifically underserved businesses or minority entrepreneurs, and that grant application is through February 28th. So thank you again, and I'll pass it along.
Bobby?
My name is Bobby Benson, and I am Congressman Emmer's Deputy Chief of Staff now, once he assumed the whip's role. Chuck, Dave, Self-Esteem Brands, thank you for hosting. Similarly, Congressman Emmer wishes he could be here, but unfortunately he couldn't. I will say I appreciate all the work you guys do for the economy, but at a personal level, my first job was for a franchisee. I worked at a Subway in Hugo, Minnesota, and I learned a lot of my skills. I wouldn't be here without that, and I also saw how hard you guys work as franchisees. Tim, the gentleman who owned it, even the days he had off, he still came in at night to put the last deposit away. And, just the hard work you guys do isn't lost on us, isn't lost on our office. And so we really appreciate that. I appreciate that, and look forward to the conversation as well.
Tam.
Good morning, everybody. Tam Kennedy, Taco John's franchisee here in the Twin Cities. 39 years in franchising, a very long time. My first W-2 job was at Pizza Hut, where I learned a lot about the restaurant business. Very young when I had that job, but I learned more about franchising, just having that job and what it takes to manage people and inventory and capital. And it really led me on a path to consider restaurants as my career. So excited to be here, represent my brand, Taco John's, certainly the franchisee community, but also IFA as a board member and a newly elected board member to our foundation, which does a lot of good work educating around open for opportunity and all of our underserved opportunities, all of our communities and our folks out there that want to get into business. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
John.
Hi there. I'm John Francis. I like to introduce myself as a recovering franchisor, trying to stop. I grew up in a franchise business. My parents founded and scaled and successfully sold a hair salon franchise based here in Minneapolis, and it was a great run. I literally grew up in a franchise organization. I've been a franchisor, franchisee, a developer, supplier. Had a lot of fun with the industry, and I've seen it done well, and I've seen it done not so well. And for the last 10 years, I've been serving as an advisor, a coach, a board member, just trying to help other folks get it right. And long participant in IFA. I think I figured out this year's conference will be my 35th IFA conference, which is nuts. I'm getting old, but I love it. So glad to be here, and thanks you guys for hosting.
Thanks, John. Stacy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Anderson. I am the brand president for Anytime Fitness. I manage the domestic franchise system here, which represents 2,500 plus clubs and 1,600 small business owners. I serve at the pleasure of those franchisees and my founders to my left. Been here going on my 11th year. My first job also was at a franchise at Dairy Queen. I don't think they were supposed to hire a 14-year-old, but I have some mad curly top skills, right? Thank you so much for having us. I really look forward to the conversation, meeting you all. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. The co-founder with this guy to my right, Dave Mortensen with Self-Esteem Brands. Again, I'll echo in what he said. We are excited just to have the community of franchising here. Thank you, Matt, for putting this all together, and of course the IFA team. They're just an incredible group to work with. I'm honored to be able to serve on the board with the IFA, and really we are passionate about franchising. Self-Esteem Brands has 5 different brands, 4 that are in the franchising space with Anytime Fitness, Wax in the City, Base Camp Fitness, and the Bar Method. And then we have a B2C brand called Stronger You Nutrition to support these brands as we expand the wealth of health across the world. And it's very exciting to use this vehicle to be able to change lives. And it's something that we are humbled with, we are honored with to be a part of. I too started in franchising as Chuck and Stacy mentioned, I was a Pizza Hut guy, and as I sit here, I'm still thinking about that thin crust pepperoni with a little bit of extra sauce. I can make it like a wildfire still to this day. So anyway, but you know what I did love about franchising when I first got in it is the practice of the way we help people run their business. I can remember early on putting those videotapes in and all the training I had to go through. So, we continue to evolve this world and the way we do it, and we get to sit here together and work on making this a better place.
Whitney and Jason.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Whitney Hahn with Great Clips, and this is my husband, Jason Hahn. We joined Great Clips 2 years ago. We started with our first salon. We have family in the business, so that's what originally interested us in Great Clips. And we loved the business model so much that in a short 3 months, we acquired 5 more salons and are looking to continuously grow. So we appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Bob.
Morning, everybody. I'm Bob Lee. I'm the Chick-fil-A local operator here in Woodbury. I've been an operator just over 5 years now, and prior to that, I worked for Cargill, and so just learning, working with franchisees, working with McDonald's for almost 10 years prior to becoming a franchisor was a really exciting opportunity, and was able to partner with Chick-fil-A and become an operator here for the last 5 years. So excited to be here and excited to learn from others.
Hi, everyone. Salia Tucker from Senator Tina Smith's office. I cover the Senator's Economic Development and Business portfolio. Very excited to be here, and thank you to the Self-Esteem brand for extending an invite to our office. Senator Smith wishes you all well. Sadly, she couldn't be here today, but very excited to take in all of this conversation. The Senator is a staunch advocate for opportunities around workforce development, especially those that provide an additional resource to small business owner and that of underserved communities. So looking forward to this great conversation and taking it back to her, and looking forward to, cross collaboration with you all on how we can get to that, to, providing those resources as well. So thank you once again.
Lonnie?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lonnie McCorder with 36 Lynn Refuel Station. I've been the owner-operator of it going on 18 years. Years ago, I had the pleasure of working in two very great franchises. One was Haagen-Dazs, the other one was Orange Julius, and really excited to be here today and listen to the panelists and be an active participant.
Chris?
Actually, my name is Doug Speedling. So Chris walked in my office yesterday. I'm a carpenter contractor. I own Doug Speedling Builders, non-union. I own Carpentry Builders, a union company. Our sales last year were around 20 million. And Chris gave me the paperwork to read through. I've been in front of Department of Labor. I testified at the Senate a year or so ago. And my goal is always to keep carpenter wages up where they belong and to have a good workforce. When I mention non-union, our non-union people have vacation, holiday pay, 401k, disability insurance, and in our market, when I testified at the Senate, was to try to get some of the people that operate different than I do out of the place. I am excited to listen to the franchise. I feel like I got to go look at how do I get into franchise. But I have as John mentioned over there, I call it a curse, John. I wake up every morning and I want to do construction. I'm 65, I still want to go to work. It's a curse, but I do want my people to make good wages. I like what I heard over here, that franchisees pay their employees better and things like that. So, but I got asked to sit in and just listen and speak. I do hire people from Aerotech and all these temporary companies, and anyway, to get through the ups and downs of today we're building the project down there where they took down the McDonald's, and there's a 300-unit apartment building going up. We're doing all the carpenter labor on the framing for that project. So I'm the odd one here, I think.
Not at all. Brian?
Welcome. Good morning. I'm Brian Schnell. I'm a franchise lawyer, head up the franchise practice at the Faegre Drinker Law Firm based in Minneapolis. Been in franchising my entire professional career, 35 plus years. First project, not first job, but first project was for Dairy Queen. So again, my entire career. And I'm excited because, as has happened so often in the past, franchising can provide solutions to what we're facing now in the local, state, and national and global economies. And so excited about this conversation because I think collectively we can get it done.
Thanks, Brian. We're going to kick off the conversation now, and this is where I have a little liberty. So I'm going to turn to the Hans because I just did the math. You decided to get into personal hair care 2 years ago. And now you've grown, and I know a couple owner-operators of salons who really were upended 2 years ago. Talk about the decision join Great Clips then, and just the spirit of taking the step then, and what prompted it as we were just barely coming out of the pandemic.
Well, one of the drivers was we moved to the Twin Cities. We were living in, thank you, we were living in Mankato, and we were both in corporate sales jobs, looking to run our own business. And so in doing so, we had networked with our family in Chicago, saw the success that they brought, and we started networking with Great Clips and trying to find an opportunity to get our foot in the door. The way we looked at it was, yes, it was risky, but with risk brings opportunity. And so we had the opportunity to acquire our first salon, and we hit the ground running and went after it. Glad we did that, because once you get your foot in the door with the franchise model, it opens the door to so many other opportunities. So in the Minneapolis market, Great Clips is a closed market, and you have to be a franchisee to grow. And so once we got our foot in the door with the one salon, it opened the door for 5 more 3 months later. And so for us, it was, yes, it was a gamble, and yes, it was a risky time to take those chances, but we're very happy that we did, so.
Sounds great. Bob, I want to now go to you, Chick-fil-A, which has just kind of been on fire growing, but going, again, we just heard, going from a corporate job to franchisee. Why Chick-fil-A? Why leave the stable confines of Cargill?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity, working with Cargill, to actually work with McDonald's.
If you can get a little closer to your mic, no problem.
Working with the franchisee, and so working shoulder to shoulder with a lot of the franchisees and learning from them, and learning from some of the original people that knew Ray Kroc at McDonald's, and getting that passion and understanding the impact that they have in their local community, and what they do for their team members, what they have done throughout their career in developing talent and developing others, and dedicating their lives to making their community stronger. And so had then an additional opportunity to work with Chick-fil-A a few years later, and just same thing around the passion about developing people and really being part of a community. And so I was able to talk with Chick-fil-A, interview. It takes a very long time in that type of franchise model to get a location, and happily that they were growing in Minnesota, and similar to what Whitney was saying, that they were growing here, and so I went through the interview process, was selected for the Maplewood location originally, and then just recently relocated here to Woodbury. And so it's been a great opportunity for my family. Risk, just like any other business, but it's been outstanding partnership between Chick-fil-A and myself, and being part of this community here in Woodbury.
Thanks. Chuck, I'm going to turn to you just because of scale. Both these folks talked about workforce and taking that jump. When you guys started, and now as much as you've grown, how do you help these franchisees understand workforce, the kind of that on-ramp to grow and to build? And obviously workforce is a huge issue for most industries right now. So what are you guys seeing, and what have you learned over the years?
We often say that everything about the brand starts here, and so we have to kind of model the type of workplace culture and best practices of an employer. And, I'd like to share a story of something that's happening right now in real time. When we bought Basecamp Fitness back in late 2018, they were a California-based brand with 5 studios. And there was, at the time, an assistant manager. Her name was Katie, working in one of the California studios. And then when we started to build some corporate stores, one of them here in Minnesota, she relocated from California to come to Edina to be the studio manager. And now she's maybe 60 days away from relocating to Australia to launch Basecamp Fitness in Australia, right? So it's really cool to provide these opportunities for people to stretch and learn and grow their professional career. In fact, Stacy started 10 years ago as our first chief marketing officer, and today she oversees the biggest part of our business, Anytime Fitness, our Strong U division, and Healthy Contributions, another unit that works with the healthcare. And so, again, an incredible progression of a career, and she's a vital leader for Self-Esteem Brand. So we'd love to provide those opportunities. We do it with active mentoring. We do it by, we take 0.5% of our annual revenue and put it into an employee growth fund, so we are always reinvesting in our employees. In fact, at the IFA this year, like almost every year now, we have about a half a dozen people going through the Certified Franchise Executive Program. And so we're actually paying for that, for them to do that. And it's a 2-year program where once they achieve their CFE, they can use that with SEB and beyond. And so we're just big believers in reinvesting in our team, right, to help them become better holistically, both in their professional and their personal life. And so we try to pass that on to our franchisees is, how do you create a best-in-class culture at your small business? And we are all in a war for talent. And so how do you attract your employees? How do you retain your employees? And how do you empower them? And so the things we do here, even at our scale, we can distill down in a smaller way for a Waxahachie City studio that might have 6 or 7 frontline workers. We still value our people, and we still have a purpose. We want to make sure everyone's tied to success and the profit and the success of the business, and then we have a great deal of fun. We call that our 4 Ps. And so, I think one of our most important jobs is to win the talent war. And so we actively are working with our franchisees and coaching them where we can on attracting, retaining, and empowering their team to be best in class.
Thanks, Chuck. Tam, I want to turn to you because I'm starting to envision kind of a road, a journey that franchisees are on from that, you get on the on-ramp, you're on the highway, there's probably some speed bumps. But you started in a franchise. I started, one of my first jobs after being a paperboy was, it wasn't a franchise, but it was a locally owned pizza chain called Devani's. And today, when I go into Devani's, they had a 3-phrase motto then, it still sits on the wall, and it was work hard, care, work hard, and have fun. That's all it said. And I say to people I mentor or employ now, hey, it's all we need to do. Care, work hard, and have fun. Talk about your journey from early employee to owner to, how long, and kind of the threads along the way that are consistent in success.
Sure, happy to. So unconventional journey, really. I got my job through the unemployment office in 1984. Needed a job, had just moved back from California, didn't really, and moved back to Des Moines, Iowa, had recently gotten married, needed a job, went and literally looked through Microfiche, if anybody can remember that, for a job. And there was a job posted that for a secretary to answer phones. Paid $4.05 an hour. And I had 2 interviews that day. One was with a bank, and one was with this gentleman to be a secretary and learn a little bit more about what he did. He talked about he owned some Taco John's in Minnesota, and he owned some Burger Kings in North and South Dakota, Minnesota, and Iowa. And I thought to myself that night before I made my decision, I'll never own the bank, but there's a chance that I can learn something, and still having an interest in restaurants, maybe there's a way to do this besides answering the phone. And so I did. I actually took it upon myself. This is really scary to say, but I'm self-taught in accounting and bookkeeping at the time, and I learned computers on Lotus 123 version 1A. And it was about spreadsheets. And my job was that I took upon myself to try to understand where the breakfast sausage patties were going. Because it was new to Burger King. Inventory management was something that I thought I really wanted to know more about, and I could be helpful. I could be value added. So through my course, came through administratively. 15 years later, my boss wanted to retire, and his 2 sons didn't have an interest in the business. So I raised my hand and I said, I'd like to buy them. And he said, you've never run a restaurant. You can do every part of this company, but you've never made a taco. And I said, okay, challenge accepted. So I worked for a year at night on my own time in the restaurants, taught by some of the best 16 and 18-year-old people in the world, working at our Maryland Avenue, St. Paul location. My son was 6 at the time. He did his homework in the booths while I learned how to make tacos and close restaurants. And so after that year, had the chance to buy all the restaurants, bought them, and kind of has led me to where I'm at today. I own 6 Taco John's here in the Twin Cities. I've had other brands that have come and gone during the 2008 recession. I look at restaurants particularly as this pathway for people like me that may not go to college, but may want a way to own their own business and contribute to their community in a different way. My 4 words that we have in my company is, our family feeds friends. That's it. That's our motto. We are community-based, put people to work, give people a chance to have their first job. And for me, I'm very blessed to be able to say I've had more than 10,000 young lives come through my company. There are at least 6 Taco John's multi-unit owners that have worked for me, a couple of Jimmy John's owners that have worked for me as well. It is my goal, and always has been my goal, to give people the opportunity to learn 3 things: how to manage people, how to manage money, and how to manage inventory. And I believe that if you can learn all 3 of those, you can run any business in the world. And that's what we do, and we pay you to learn it at 14 years old with restrictions, according to whatever the current state law is.
Hey, Tam, was your Taco John's off Maryland and Arcade?
Yes, it was.
Oh my gosh, you've fed me 1,000 tacos, I bet.
I probably have.
Taco Tuesday, I grew up blocks
But
from
how
that
many
place.
potato olays, Chuck?
And
Yes, potato lays, I love those. Yeah.
it's my pleasure to be able to say that I got to feed our IFA team yesterday. They did a back-of-the-house tour at our Little Canada location. They had never from Washington, D.C. had Taco John's, and they learned an awful lot about Taco Tuesday, which is trademarked by Taco John's, 6-pack and a pounds, and all of the rest of the things that go with their brand. So I hope you're hungry.
We're getting hungry, Tam, and thank you. I grew up about half a mile from the Little Canada location in Shoreview. So, Leanne, I think Tam represents the story that people come to Women Venture with. You said there's more interest in franchising right now. You do training, you do micro, lending. What are the barriers and what are the opportunities for the folks, the clients and members who come into Women Venture, and how do you help them?
Sure, great question, thank you. So I was taking furious notes, Tammy, as you were talking, and I think there is a reoccurring theme that aligns very well with our mission, which is we need to help and create more Tammys. And we have women who are interested, they've raised their hand, people are pivoting. They are pivoting away from corporate jobs, they are pivoting away from being in the home. 40 years ago, when we first started out, it was focused around helping women enter or re-enter the workforce with translating their domestic household responsibilities into a job. And today we're talking about entrepreneurship and business ownership, right? So our goal is to help to eliminate, remove, reduce the barriers to entry as a small business owner and entrepreneur. And we support anyone that's just getting started through businesses that are scaling $1 million plus in revenue each year. And as I hear Tammy's story, who we're supporting today are coming to us and saying, I want to create my own business, but I need your support around how do I even get started? What's the training plan? How can I help myself? And what are the things that I need to know today? Because the world looks really different, right? Chuck was saying that we are in a talent war. We absolutely are. And we also have people who are exiting. There was an organization that we spoke with just a couple of weeks ago. 40% of their employees, well-known organization here in St. Paul, 40% are eligible for retirement. What are we going to do from a workforce development perspective and try to keep people in the workforce and develop talent along the way? So we are hearing from women and people of color in particular who are saying, we need your support. And I also need your support not only in the training piece, but the capital access, right? So we are a microlender. As I had mentioned, we loan up to $100,000. There are CDFI partners that we have in the community here in Twin Cities and Greater Minnesota to help people get capital access. And as someone who has never worked in a franchise, but I've been interested in it, and it may be a second or a third career for me, but as I went and I looked at what opportunities are available to me, my own personal experience is that I don't have access to capital. There is this wealth gap that exists in a very clear and loud way, if you will, where I can check a lot of boxes from running a business, knowing the money, knowing all those pieces, but if I don't have the money in the bank to be able to even pursue an opportunity, right? What does that look like? What does capital access mean to women and people of color? That's the greatest barrier that we have when talking with our clients, because what we can do is provide that training and development. We can partner, right, to provide the content, but it is about where are the funds to get started. Because we know people are going to work really hard, they're dedicated. We know that our clients give back to community, they support their families, they hire people at incredible rates. But what they need is that extra support. And so how do we come together as community to be able to do that? And I'm asking in terms of our private business corporate partners, as well as from our state and federal lawmakers.
Thanks, Leanne. I'm going to turn to you, Jody, because you brought that up as the government is trying to help with access to capital and funding and workforce. Are there things that Senator Klobuchar and other folks need to hear from small businesses? Because, you know, as somebody who is responsible for some of the things that the media covers and is out there, but what do they need to hear? What kind of stories does the senator like to hear about these things so that she can deliver those messages to Washington?
Well, thank you. That's a great question, and I will also open it to the fellow Representative Emmer and Senator Smith's staff, and I also know we have Representative Phillips' team in the House, too. I think the anecdotal stories of small business owners are always powerful to take back to Washington, and the impact of the senator's hearing over and over as she's been traveling around the state about the workforce shortage, and I think it is helpful to learn from you all, what does that look like? Like how, I mean, it's powerful to hear about the talent wars, right? And Minnesota has the lowest unemployment rate in the country, and we know, as you've been speaking to, there is a wave that's happening in retirement that we've been seeing happening for a while. We also know that there's tremendous talent as population is growing in the metro area, right? And you sort of think about those different components. So I don't want to put others on the spot, but I'm not an expert in workforce development. But I know that the senator has been interested in hearing, like, what are some of the ways, like, immigration is a topic that she often brings up, like in terms of providing visa or opportunities. And for me as a novice, like, is that something that's relevant for you all? Like the talent that you're bringing on, the people who you're training, apprenticeship programs, or, you know, sort of how do you find your talent? And then what does that pipeline look like? Like how do you bring them in, and how do we continue to grow it is probably a big one. And the other thing that she is hearing about, and I'm sure Representative Emmer and Senator Smith and Representative Phillips, childcare seems to be a really big barrier. People want to work, and it's kind of staggering because of access and because of cost. You know, parents or a parent can't get into the workforce, or they may not be able to develop a business because there isn't access to affordable childcare. But so that's, and again, I say that as not, you know, an expert, but as a person who really wants to learn more from you all.
Thanks, Jody. Matt, how does this set up federally? And I'm guessing you're hearing these same stories all over the country.
We are. I think, just to maybe address the immigration question, the number one issue impacting every category of franchising, whether it's restaurants or hotels or fitness or salons, you know, and really the whole business community, is we don't have enough people in this country to do the work that needs to be done. And particularly, you know, we're largely a service sector economy. You know, we need more bodies in this country in order to do that. So, you know, we're widely supportive of Congress figuring that piece out with all the appropriate, you know, issues around border security, et cetera, as well. I think, you know, bring it back to franchising and, you know, some of the things both federally and at the state level that can be a challenge for our business model. You heard this, you know, I think loud and clear from Chuck. Franchisors exist to support their franchisees' success. That is the essence of the business model. They don't exist to, you know, day-to-day run those franchise businesses in terms of, you know, who they hire, what they pay their employees. That is, you know, Tam's job. It's the Hans job, right? And so there are times where government makes it more difficult for a brand to help support getting employees, providing opportunities for programs to be developed to to deal with talent and recruitment. And so that is something that we've been particularly focused on at the International Franchise Association is, creating laws and shaping regulations that allow franchisors to do what they need to do to help support their franchisees around this whole concept of employment and joint employment. And government oftentimes is making that more difficult than it needs to be. And that's inhibiting the ability not just for a franchisor to continue to grow and support their franchisees, but for franchisees to be successful. And Tam has had the opportunity, I know, to testify on this on Capitol Hill and some of the challenges where she's had on this issue. And so I don't know if we want to maybe go to that for a moment.
Yeah, Tam, can you talk about that and what your message to Congress was?
I can. Well, it's a conversation that's been going on for a long time now, and this conversation about joint employer and all of the peripheral pieces that go with it. Right now, it's about trying to understand who has day-to-day control of the business, and franchising is really very clear. It's been, a type of business for a very long time. It's contractual, right? We have our lanes. Our franchisor has the support mechanism in this relationship. They have the idea, perhaps they're the founder, the innovator. They help us with services and support that we need to get going and keep going. But the franchisee, the business owner, the operator, runs the day-to-day. So I own my own company. They are my employees. I choose who I hire, who I want to develop and promote. I am the community voice. I work on the community on the Main Street level. And I look to my franchisor for maybe technological innovations, new menu items. We have one coming out next week. That's not my role. My role is to sell and work with the product that I've signed on for with my brand. Where we're at, though, is we've got this conversation going that because franchisors have some sort of an interest in our day-to-day activity, that they might be exerting too much control over our employees, which means that maybe they should be responsible for everything that happens with our employees. And as a franchisee, I can tell you that will never happen with someone like me. These are my kids. These are my businesses. And our government, whether it's well-intended or not, really is having a hard time accepting that it's possible to have distinct roles in the employment relationship. There's a contract between a franchisee and a franchisor. The employment contract piece or the employment piece of this is between me as an operator and my kids. So I think it's an education circle that we need to continue to talk about. We need to, again, this is 2017. We thought we put it to bed. It's back, this joint employer thing. And I have to tell you that it is slowing down growth in the franchising sector. Owners are hesitating just a little bit about growing in other markets, depending on what states are doing legislatively, choosing which states they will and won't work in because they're afraid of how much more control the government is going to put on this relationship that they thought that they had originally signed up for. So it's a conversation we need to keep having and educating around.
Brian, I'm going to turn to you because I'm guessing these are some of the questions and challenges that you see. Are there tweaks, changes, alignment that could kind of just eliminate some of these barriers or from a legal standpoint?
I think the IFA has done a really good job of trying to educate the decision makers. And I know in Minnesota, Representative Emmer and Representative Phillips, they understand that small business, franchise, or franchisee distinction. And I know we've had conversations with Senator Klobuchar and Senator Smith, and we just need to continue to do that because I think, Leanne, some of your clients, the franchisor will say, sorry, we've been advised that we shouldn't get involved in your employment-related matters, period. So they're not getting any of that support on employee workforce development. And other franchisors will find ways, right? They'll find ways, but there's always risk. And so why should there be risk in something that the stakeholders in franchising are pretty clear on, as Tam alluded to? Franchisees want to be franchisees. They want to own their small business. Franchisors don't want to get into that space, but they want to provide the support and tools. And I think it's continuing to educate that and having our legislators, and I think we've got unique opportunity in Minnesota to continue to emphasize that and have some clear guidance on how franchising shouldn't be subject to the same joint employer rules that might apply to other businesses where there isn't that distinct rule. It's never been a problem up until the last, now it's going on probably 7 or 10 years that McDonald's has been facing it and others. We need guidance, clear guidance on it. And if we can get that, then you're going to have a lot more of what Tam suggested, a lot more of what Leanne's clients need, and that's going to benefit small businesses in Minnesota and beyond.
You know, I hear about this a lot in all industries, is just the alignment between federal government, state government, and local government. And Lonnie, I'm going to turn to you because you're engaged. You operate in Minneapolis. There are, I don't want to say layers, but there's different sets of rules depending on which government you're dealing with. How, I mean, you're small. You have workforce challenges. You have economic challenges. Where does kind of the regulated part of the business line up as a challenge for you as you operate Linther 6?
Great question, boys. In particular, as it pertains to labor issues. So I operate in Minneapolis, so we fall underneath the Minneapolis Civil Rights Department, the Minnesota State Department of Labor, and also the U.S. Department of Labor. And there's been times in the past 5 to 7 years where I've had to deal with all three departments, at times with disgruntled employees who may not have full education of the laws and ordinances in place there, and they want to kind of stick it to their former boss by pushing me through that whole process there. And one of the things, the challenges I think some people face is, one, we want to balance out making sure that there's no employees that are taken advantage of or victimized in the workplace. But at the same time, we also don't want to create a environment, at least I don't, where, there's kind of this weaponization of government in some ways where it kind of goes after business intentionally or unintentionally. I think more the latter than the former. But, I can say from personal experience that it can be challenging at times to articulate that and kind of state your case, because not a whole lot of people go through the process of saving up a lot of money, taking a risk to buy a business, and working really hard to make sure employees and customers are taken care of on times and years where you may not necessarily be taking a salary. So I think that dynamic definitely plays a role there, and it's a tension that's going on, but it's a good tension, I guess.
Bobby Benson from Tom Emmer's office. What, from Subway to advising a congressman and hearing these things, obviously the congressman has a new role in Washington, and these are, I don't want to keep saying barriers, but there's something holding the economy back, whether it's immigration, whether it's, overregulation, whether it's just, the kind of volatility in our economy the last couple of years. Are there things that kind of draw a thread between these things that you think the congressman would be passionate about trying to advocate for?
Yeah, I mean, I'll sound like the token Republican and say overregulation is a big problem. It's great to hear about opportunities for increased capital, things like that, but it's not something we should forget with the government getting in the way of things. That shows up in things like the gyms being closed during COVID, non-essential, you guys were closed for that, or the joint employer, as Tam was talking about. That rule we thought was put to bed in 2017. It cost, in 2015, it cost over $30 million to franchisee, hundreds of thousands of jobs. And so Tom's concerned about making sure that we don't continue to harm businesses. Policy-wise, that's going to be things like making sure the tax cuts put in place in 2017 are extended if they need to be modified to help businesses compete more. That's the kind of stuff we're going to be taking looks at in Washington.
Thanks, Bob.
1 second, though.
Yeah.
One thing Tam didn't go into is the new item at Taco John's that's debuting soon. Got to know more about that, but we'll handle that offline.
We will, trust me. I also think that I'd like the territory in DC if these IFA folks had never had Taco John's before, so there you go. Might be an opportunity. Bob, I want to turn to you in Chick-fil-A, because to go from, again, Cargill to Chick-fil-A, were there any unexpected rules? Did Chick-fil-A help you? Did they guide you? Because I think that's one of the things. It's one thing to wake up one day and decide to open a store or open a franchise, but what can you learn from the franchisor and how they make that, at least, make you smarter or make you better prepared?
Yeah, great question. A couple of things. So I have my support center guest here with Bernard, and so what Chick-fil-A does for what they would call an external candidate like myself becoming an operator, we take a fundamentals class of about 6 weeks, and you learn about what Chick-fil-A is about, some legal things, hiring and training, some governmental things that for your particular state. So Minnesota has some different OSHA rules than the federal perspective. So you go through a lot of that, and so they give you that information. But kind of to Tam's point, you're on your own. Like, they are very clear, and we're very clear as part of the contract, is you're going to hire your own employees, you're going to develop your own team, you're going to have your own training program. We have some structure that you can use, but it doesn't mean that you have to use that. And many times it's a launching off point as an operator, but we take it to the next level because we make it our own. And then they come back and say, we're going to take that and we're going to use that as the new best practice within Chick-fil-A. That happens lots of times, that the operator works on it, they become the expert, and then they share that with other operators and with the corporation. And so my experience in the 5+ years as an operator is they give us guidance, but it's on us to make sure that we're following the laws that we're regulated in. We're getting guidance from Chick-fil-A on some of the larger topics. I mean, today, just this morning, we have the new 401k law that's going into effect. And that's a whole different regulation that my 401k vendor is working through and understanding, and it's a lot more regulation. It's a lot more things that the team member now has to deal with. And now me is trying to understand that and saying, wait a second, I got into this business as a great benefit for all my team members to have, because I tell them that you can actually become a millionaire if you just put money aside every single paycheck, and after 30, 40 years, you can have this as your own. And now that's been regulated where that becomes more difficult for them to even get access to and for us to implement. And so those are the things that I kind of look at and say, as someone newer into the model, it's going to be really challenging for folks that Leanne's trying to work with and saying, you got to know all this stuff. And there is no book out there for you to know this stuff until it comes on your desk. And I think those are some of the challenges that we're all facing at this time, either new or if you had more experience into it. It's becoming more and more challenging in those aspects.
Salia, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I've known the senator for about 26 years, and I met her when she owned her own business. So I know she understands these things. She, I think, has a good sense of striking a balance. What do you hear from kind of the workforce community and what they want to make sure they're protected on, or that the senator hears about, and kind of how we can either deal with immigration or some of these other issues to provide us, the workforce that this country needs right now?
Thank you. That's a great question. I definitely think that from conversations with the senator and what her priorities are, definitely highlighting the accessibility aspect of it. Not only do we have those resources, but how are they getting to those communities and those business owners that desperately need it? It comes from partnership opportunities with local community leaders, legislation, making sure that we're being impactful and intentional about it all, not only just
just the ways in which we provide those resources, but the partnership opportunities that would align with it. Senator Smith is, when it comes to being intentional about the work, how are we communicating directly with those business owners, and how are we having those conversations that are coming directly from them and how they want those resources to be made readily available to them. So it entails a lot of communication, a lot of what we're doing right now to not only address the situation, but also taking it back to those ownerships, those businesses, and engaging with them and making sure that we're getting the word and the feedback from them. So I think that from those conversations is a lot about what we're hearing is it accessible? What we have out there, we can say there's funding, we can say there's this, there's that, and what Emmer, Representative Emmer's deputy said, it's not only the overregulation, but how are we making sure that we make it easier to attain those? So I would say accessibility is one of the focus point of Senator Smith's priority, especially after COVID and what businesses are facing right now in workforce development. We got to be more intentional about the ways in which we provide them and make it sustainable so that they can continue to access those funding, those resources.
Thanks. John Francis, I'm going to turn to you just because I feel like you may have a little historian view here, and I appreciate that, having known you for a couple decades. Are there things that, because like everything, franchising has probably gotten more complex, and that's not always bad because people are more sophisticated. How do we simplify, or how can we streamline, or are there things you've seen as you coach people that we want to kind of let them know ahead of time so it doesn't become a surprise?
Well, that's a good question. I think really, I think the IFA does a pretty good job of that, frankly, by creating an environment where franchise professionals can learn from each other as much as they learn from a school or a university or some kind of an organized program. There is a tremendous connection and community within the franchise family, they call it, right? And it's real, and it's powerful. And so I encourage people when they come into the franchising, or I get a hold of them and say, well, look, this is great for you, but you really need to connect with these other folks. So as far as streamlining the models, it's so complicated. It really depends on the nature of the business. I'm thinking about some of my clients that have what you would think are straightforward business models, but the loops and hoops they have to jump through to stay in compliance with regulations, whether it's a state or federal, and just accounting. I mean, it's very complicated. So I don't know that there's any specific answer that would be unique to the franchise universe, except for the advantage of the community connection that people can learn and share. And most franchisors are very willing to share what they do and how they do it and why they do what they do for their systems.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing, and I think it builds off something Leanne was talking about. Part of Open for Opportunity is, we can't be everywhere as the IFA, so our job and part of this campaign is building partnerships with other organizations that have aligned goals with us as the IFA, and with what you've heard from franchisors who are seeking new people to come into their systems, and using those partnerships with community groups and with government, both at the federal and the state level, because you are influencers and are trying to get word out to your local communities and your constituents about what the business community is trying to do. And so, we have the subject matter expertise. You have the distribution network in a lot of ways. And, part of this campaign is how do we extend our reach into other audiences.
Dave, I want to kind of lift up some things that I know Self-Esteem Brands has done the vision I give is kind of connecting the dots of success here. So what are the common dots of success that you see of in your growth of the franchisee, the location, the regulatory or the state environment? Like, how do you have multiple brands in multiple countries. There's got to be some dots that connect between these that you say, this is a winner, or let's hold back on that one, or, those kinds of things.
Well, let me start with Self-Esteem Brands. We're so excited about open for opportunity in the education of working in franchising in general. You know, as we look at working with our political parties, who I think we are getting closer to, we realize the same things you talk about, we have to make sure we have. We call it our CAT. And there's a CAT between our governments and, of course, our franchisors and our franchisees to create more communication, alignment, and trust and understanding. Recently, we just had Jessica Lumen here, for an example. And as we had Jessica Lumen here, we're very excited about her focus on working with us to be able to combat things like joint employer, right? And really work towards doing the right things, because what she's really doing is trying to make a great workforce. You talked about it as well. And by the way, you belong here more than anyone, because construction and architecture, we all need. So thank you for being here. And if you can make it affordable, that'd even be better. You know, we really appreciate it. But, and I'll get to your answer, but what I'm excited about is we realize when we sit down with our politicians, it's our role to help communicate our advantages. As Tam talked about, is some of the same things. We look for the right skill sets. We look for the right skill sets from what they have. But you know what franchising really does? Not many people can come into a business and have the people skills, the finance skills, the inventory skills, and all the other skill sets needed to start a new business and then evolve it. Franchising gives the opportunity for us to help them lift the skills they may lack and bring that to them. But our politicians need to understand we need the freedom to be able to provide those assets to do so without being penalized for helping support them in their personal growth in franchising. So what do we look for? People who are aligned in those efforts. One of the things I said in our most recent discovery day around what we truly need in our brand, and this will just be crazy for you, we need people. We need people who care about people. And the biggest asset and skill set we need to prove before they become a franchisee in our system is, do they have care? Do they really care about the people within their organization, the customers that walk in the door, the purpose that we serve, and do we enjoy being with them? You know, you talked about playing it in itself. Those are the natural alignment skills that we look for. So it's not a magic recipe. You need to understand who you are as a business and a brand and be able to make sure the people you bring into that brand align to that culture that you have.
Tam?
Yeah, so I really love this piece of it. I'll give you just a touch more about me so that maybe it'll connect a dot for you. My father was an independent truck driver when most truck drivers were not. And so I learned at a very young age that you do for yourself, you go a hustle. You know, I lived in a semi back and forth in this country most of my childhood. I went to more than 17 schools. I can count 17 schools in 12 years. I lived in at least twice that number of cities for very short periods of time. I never started school on the first day of school, and I never made it to the last day of school except my senior year. And so I lived very unconventionally, but I learned a lot about the country, and I learned a lot about commerce in the way that we conducted business. He hauled a lot of produce. So he spent a lot of time in California in the Valley with crops, and the folks that, you know, part of my job as a child was to help load the truck from the field to the truck, taking it to New York, to Hunts Point, unloading it for the East Coast, and back and forth we went. So the independent nature of becoming a business owner somewhere is found through your environment. So I want to talk about maybe a little bit about this talent pipeline. I think we need to really start thinking in our country about where we're at societally. There are studies out there that show now that young people are waiting 3 and 4 years longer to get a driver's license. That used to be the freedom that allowed you to go get a job. You wanted the job for the car, you wanted the car for the fun, right? We're seeing a society change from that. No need for a car, no need for, maybe freedom means something different, and there's another way for transportation. But it is slowing down people entering the workforce. And so when we think about parallel tracks here, we should think about education. We need feeder systems in our high schools, just like Head Start is for young toddlers. We need this for young entrepreneurs. We need high school education around trades particularly. I'm passionate about it. I just built a house, so trust me. I need more, we need more, we need it not to be a bad thing to want to work with your hands and your mind, not necessarily go to formal secondary education lines. But I also think that we need to think about how young people might want to enter the workforce for a reason other than just the job. What could they become passionate about? Well, maybe it's an accreditation that launches them on their way to becoming a business owner, a young business owner. Maybe it's a format that some of these great brands that we're sitting here with today put together a feeder system or a pilot system about taking some of these employees that are already in the franchise space and working on their educational development, turning them into future leaders, not just putting the onus on our business owners. There's a lot of things that we can do if we look at kind of where we're at. And I'm pretty passionate about it, as you can tell, because, you know, I've had the extreme, you know, pleasure of working with young people my entire life and watching them go from environments where, you know, maybe they'd never liked school and didn't achieve in school. Maybe they don't want to go home. Maybe they don't like their home. But if I can give them a place to really want to go to, then I'm part of their success down the road. And that's part of what small business and particularly franchising gives. One last thing about franchising, it is a unique American invention for a reason. I believe it is because we think that way, that all of us want to be independent in some way. We want to control our own outcome. And I think franchising gives us that. And I think if we start thinking about young people now, figuring out how it's going to take some years to rebuild our workforce, talking about the people that are retiring out. If COVID didn't teach us anything, it's that we need to be thinking long game here. We need to start now on junior high and high school and thinking about how to get them inspired and excited about work again. And then what do they get when they earn? That's what I would like to add to the conversation. Sorry, but yeah.
No, I mean, I think I think that is there. And I would just say this, you know, franchises generate $13.8 billion in activity in the state of Minnesota. We're a dozen plus people sitting around a table that are kind of, I'm imagining the gears of churning of the economy and the people who work and the franchisees that do that. And so hopefully this is that starter fuel to lift this and amplify the conversation as we go forward. I know conversations will continue, and I just want to thank Self-Esteem for hosting and kind of turn it over to you, Matt, as we kind of continue this or wrap up.
Yeah, I think this is just the beginning of, you know, ideas and discussion. As I mentioned, Minneapolis-St. Paul is such an incubator of the franchise community. You know, lots of startup brands, lots of well-established brands, and a healthy, robust franchise community. There is, Brian does an event here in downtown Minneapolis every August with his firm and many others, and, you know, welcome additional partners, I think, to that effort. And, you know, just really appreciate the partnerships with our elected officials and other organizations that were here today. Chuck, Dave, Stacy, thank you guys so much for hosting us in your lovely campus and HQ. I think I get here too often in the winter. I want to come back when I can enjoy those trails out there around the building here.
Matt, you can enjoy trails during the winter too. Chuck, you might wrap us up here, and I know conversations will continue as we linger.
Yeah, look, thanks everyone for coming. And, you know, again, I think Minnesota can continue to be a leader in the franchise community, right? What we do here, the rest of the country can follow. And quite frankly, we lead the globe in franchising best practices. And so, you know, to take it from us, we're in 35 countries, and other countries are kind of developing the franchise infrastructure to help small business owners be successful across Southeast Asia, in India, right, in Australia and New Zealand. And so what we do here has rippling effects around the world. And so we are just very, very proud to empower small business owners to, you know, change the fabric of their community. I mean, and especially, you know, if 30% of franchises are owned by people of color, right? We exceed that because we have, 5,000 locations in 35 countries. And so we're very proud to be maybe one of the most diverse franchise brands out there. And I think part of the way to increase diversity is to see successful, diverse owners operate in their community. They typically hire more diverse frontline personnel. They attract more frontline, consumers that are more diverse. And so it is, especially because we're a little bit lower cost, we have the ability to be affordable and approachable, and actually, a franchise, provides you the independence, but although you're working for yourself, you're not by yourself, because the franchisor is like a backstop. They're there to help you in tough times. In fact, it's never been more evident during COVID. I mean, independent small businesses, like in our industry, nearly 30% of independent gyms and studios closed. Right, our failure rate was significantly lower, right? And I think the franchise community has never been more important during the last couple of years of COVID, right? We were there for our franchisees to help them through the tough times and then amplify things during the good times. And so it really is a wonderful partnership. We're just really proud to be able to do this around the world. And thank you for coming. And you're welcome to stick around for a little bit. We have waxing services here for waxing the city. So we have a tattoo room here. So you're welcome to get waxed. You're welcome to get tattooed. We can go for a walk outside. We have workout facilities here. So we really take that talent war seriously. We believe a lot in our 4 Ps, people, purpose, profits, place. So we're welcome to show you around the office. And just, again, thank you for coming.
And if you want to learn more about franchising, talk to Stacy. She knows more about this than we do.
Absolutely. Thanks. The punchline is we like to be number 1 in Minnesota, and what I heard is that we're number 3, and so we still have a little ways to go to beat Dallas and Atlanta. So thank you all for coming.